Thank you for joining us today for 30 minutes to have an intentional conversation regarding racism in Canada. This is one conversation in the three-part series. So if you haven't catched the other ones, make sure you go do so. And joining me today is Dr. Nana Owusu.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi.
So this conversation, a continuation. You have mentioned in the other conversations how you would, kind of describing the situations where you would get into police incidents and things like that. Some people can say that maybe you're caught in those moments or you're discriminated against because of the way you dressed or where you were or what you were doing, who you're with, that kind of thing. But I want to kind of channel that to what about in the professional setting where you are in a clinic, you're the owner, you are present yourself as a professional entrepreneur and everything. Just kind of tell us how is that? Let's start off with kind of your education background. Just kind of like tell us all the stuff you need to go through to get to where you are today.
Okay, so I did my first degree at the University of Alberta in microbiology. Then I did a master's at the University of Toronto in biomedical engineering. And then I did another one at McMaster University in health studies. And then I did my doctorate of optometry at Illinois College of Optometry. Yeah, so that was it.
Yeah, and that's in the ICOs in Chicago.
That's right.
Right. And so now, what is your professional setting like? Like, where are you practicing?
So I live in Winnipeg, Manitoba. My wife is originally from here. So after practicing in the States for a few years, we moved back to Canada. She's also Canadian. We met in school. She was in my class at ICO. And we've been practicing here. We own the clinics together. So we have 3 offices here in the city in Winnipeg. And 3 private practice locations. And so fairly big clinics in the city. One of the bigger practices here, I guess. So you when I didn't really know, you touched on something right off the hop when you were asking sort of in the professional setting what it's been like. And right away I had a story that came to mind that somebody else reminded me of recently. I was running late to work one day, so when I pulled up, I just ran into the clinic, saw my first patient, and then I had time to go back and get my bag and everything out of my car. And then I was also going to be taking a piece of equipment to a different office. So I was carrying that to my trunk to put it in the car and then take something else out. And as I was unlocking my car, this vehicle, random guy, older gentleman, pulls up and basically pins me against my car with his car. And he didn't hit me, but I couldn't move. I was stuck there. And he starts yelling out his window, "What are you doing to that car?" I said, "Well, it's my car, and I'm putting something in it, and I'm taking things out." He's screaming, "Well, how do I know that it's your car?" I said, "Well, it's because I have the keys. Like that's like how do I know that's your car? Like that's a ridiculous question. I've got keys. This is my car." He says, "Well, I need you to prove to me that it's your car." I said, "Look, with all due respect, I don't have to prove anything to you. I'm putting things in my cars. Thieves generally take things out. I'm putting something in the car, so that should be your first indication that I'm good here." And I'm also going to go back in my office. That is my office right there. I'm going to go back inside, and you can go on about your day. So it ended up turning into a big thing, but I told him what I did for a living, and he said there's no way. He didn't believe me. I hear that a lot. There's no way. There's no way that you're a doctor.
Wow.
Well, that's okay. I told you that I am. If you don't want to believe me, that's cool. I have patients to see. I gotta go, And so I had to and he didn't move his car. I had to slide my way out to lock my car and go back in the building. And so even professionally dressed, I probably didn't have on a tie that day, but I had pants and a shirt, dress shoes, professionally dressed. But it didn't matter what I was wearing or that I was in a professional setting. It was he saw who he saw.
What? Yeah, for sure. So let's say, and when did you start your practice?
So in 2010 is when we first opened up our clinics.
Okay. So it's been a while. And then you have 3 locations, and then
that's right.
So I imagine they're well established, and then you probably also have a big team.
Yeah, yeah, we've got a very big team, about 30 to 40 people.
Right. And then do you find it more difficult as a leader?
It's, so it is challenging to be a leader sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
but that's always been who I am. I've always sort of gravitated towards those leadership roles.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that what's maybe helped me be successful in those areas is maybe a bit of a willingness to listen. I try to be as accessible as I can,
Mm-hmm.
um, to all of our staff, to the managers who work for us. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's managing a big team of people is hard.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that quite often I'm not what people expected me to be.
Mm-hmm.
I think that probably applies to all of my life, not just professionally. I think that
Mm-hmm.
I'm not often what people expect me to be.
Mm-hmm.
um, but it works, I like to be open and have conversation like this,
Mm-hmm.
anytime somebody wants to. So whether it's regarding issues in the clinic, personal issues, current events,
Mm-hmm.
I try to make sure that my door is open so I can
Yeah.
sort of build that relationship with our staff the same way that I would try to do that with our patients. It's
Right.
very open, very relaxed environment
Mm-hmm.
and atmosphere. So yeah,
Yeah.
very
And then
honest.
you kind of mentioned the other conversation as well, is that your experience during optometry school. So, and I know it was in Chicago,
Mhm.
but I think in the professional training setting, uh, maybe you can give us an example of how maybe you felt that you have been discriminated against or treated unfairly or made the wrong assumptions.
Yeah, yeah. It's so somebody else asked me this question very recently as well. I'm on the board at ICO, and I'm on
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
alumni council there as well. And so
Mm-hmm.
we're having some conversations about some different things going on right now regarding diversity, equity,
Mm-hmm.
and inclusion. And
Mm-hmm.
somebody asked me the same question, about experiences that happened to me. And I, similar to the last conversation we had, I was talking about that armor that you sort of
Mm-hmm.
build up to protect yourself.
Yeah.
By the time I was at ICO, like I said, it was my fourth degree, so I was a little bit
Mm-hmm.
older. I had built up a pretty significant armor.
Yeah.
So honestly, a lot of the experiences and things that happened to me
Mm-hmm.
probably just sort of rolled off my back. I don't remember all of
Mm-hmm.
them, but what I remember vividly is how I saw others being treated.
Mm-hmm.
Um, One thing I will say about myself, I guess, was that so I was the president of the student association when I was
Mm-hmm.
at ICO, and
Mm-hmm.
I remember getting a lot of comments. I was told that it might have been possible that I was the first ever Black president of
Oh
the
yeah.
student association, and that
Mm-hmm.
might be true. Nobody's ever been able to tell me that there might have been
Yeah.
somebody before me.
Right.
But one thing that really was bothersome was, I'd get pulled out of class to take photos or to meet
Mm-hmm.
with faculty or whoever. ICO's
Right.
admin and faculty were very open, and so I'd have to
Mm-hmm.
run out to go meet with whoever and or take photos, and we'd be doing different publications or prints or whatever. And
Right.
I remember having classmates tell me that it wasn't because of my role, but it was because they needed a Black guy.
Oh,
And
to show diversity.
yeah, and I said,
Yeah.
I understand the ideas
Mm.
around tokenism,
Mm-hmm.
but I would also like to believe that I've earned this,
Yeah.
that,
Mm-hmm.
and so for you to just dismiss
Mm-hmm.
all that I've accomplished
Yeah.
because you were able to boil it down to just the color of my skin,
Right.
like that hurt.
Yeah, for sure.
So it was things like that. And I was probably just coming to an age where I was then willing to say something. Prior to that, I probably would have
Mm-hmm.
laughed or tried to turn it into a joke or just
Mm-hmm.
brushed it off and changed the subject.
Yeah.
But by that stage of my life, I was willing to say, no, you are wrong. This
Right.
is because I've earned this and I'm
Yeah.
busting my tail. And if
Right.
you want it to be you, then you work hard next time.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah.
And that was during optometry school. So
Mhm.
obviously everybody had to go through a ton of education to get there. So these are
Yeah.
educated people. Was that person kind of saying it in a joking way, or he was kind of like believing in it?
Yeah. It's hard to say because the saying. I mean, behind every joke there is some degree of truth, right? And so I suspect that he felt comfortable enough with me to be candid and just say what was on his mind. Um, I will say I don't always feel that I can do that. I can't always just say what I think. I have to be very careful. I think I have to be kind of measured in what I say or think sometimes, which is a big part of the problem. So I'm learning to just take that filter off and just say it. But for so long I've had that filter on, or I'll say that muzzle,
Mm-hmm.
to protect everybody else from what might be in my mind. But I don't
Mm-hmm.
think that everybody else has to necessarily do that. And
Yeah.
he definitely didn't feel he had to do that.
Right.
Um, um, he may have been joking, but I don't think that he would have said it if it
Mm-hmm.
was somebody who wasn't Black,
Right.
right? I don't think
Right.
he would have picked somebody of a different background and made the same
Mm-hmm.
comment. I think that was what
True.
was. I think it validated what he was already thinking. So as much as he thought
Right.
it was funny, I think it validated
Right.
his thought
Mm-hmm.
process.
I think that is actually a very good thing to highlight, because I know what you're talking about. And that is one thing I have felt when I was in the States,
Mhm.
is that people would make comments and disguised as a fun comment or
Right.
a passing joke, whereas I always know that there's always some sort of truth to it, or else they won't say it.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
was kind of the first moment that I have understood what microaggression was. And I think that is, people don't realize that is microaggression because you're not on the
Right.
receiving end. You kind of just
Right.
feel like I'm just being fun and being a friend. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but at the same time, it's because there's it's packaged in a way that
Exactly. Exactly.
for something that they're really feeling. Do you feel that while you're doing all these things, do you feel like you kind of have to really make sure that you're really doing it really well? Because do you feel like you have to be a certain way so people will really take you seriously and be like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yo,
Yeah.
he is great in clinic, like, oh, he's great in the student council.
Yeah, without a doubt. And it's I've also had this conversation, and people said to me, you probably didn't have to do that. You just think you did. So maybe you're part of the problem because you think you need to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I responded that by simply saying, look, like until you've walked a mile in these shoes, you just can't know. And that's not your fault. It's nobody's fault that they can't walk a mile in my
Mm-hmm.
shoes. But
Mm-hmm.
what does bother me is when people aren't willing to believe that what I'm saying could be valid, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I do feel like I always had to work a little harder. I had to dress a little bit better. I had to
Mm-hmm.
do different things to get the same response that others might
Right.
get. And I saw it. I saw what happened. If I didn't dress as well, I saw the response that I got. So I made it a point
Oh
to
wow.
dress better.
Mm-hmm.
I saw the
Mm-hmm.
response when I didn't carry myself a certain way. So I made it a point to carry myself a certain way. And
Mm-hmm.
so it led people to then now what I hear, or I shouldn't just say now, for years, what I would hear when people would make comments is, oh yeah, I know what's going on with those Black people, but you're an exception. You're different. You're
Mm-hmm.
not like those ones.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, no, I'm exactly the same as those
Mm-hmm.
ones, as you call them. We're
Right.
not any different.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I guess maybe for you, I might be more palatable, but I'm the same. We're all the same. But I
Yeah.
just learned at a young age, and my dad, in particular, both my parents, but my dad in particular, really taught me how I needed to carry myself. I watched him work so hard professionally and get passed over for opportunity after opportunity when it was
Mm.
clear that he was the most qualified.
Wow.
Um, and then eventually, when he got his chance to be the leader or the boss, he seized that opportunity and he took it and never looked back, right? And so I recognized that if that was the world I lived in, that I was going to have to do different things to make sure that nobody could ever do that to me. So, yeah.
Would you say that's kind of why you wanted to start your own clinic as well? Or what is the
Oh,
motivation
without a doubt,
behind that?
without a
Yeah.
doubt, yeah. It's there's no question. When
Mm-hmm.
I was working in Florida and I had a boss,
Mm-hmm.
it was the number of times that somebody said to me, "Okay, so you did all that stuff. How about you do me a favor? Go get your boss now,
Right.
who happens to have blonde hair and blue eyes, and let him do the same thing again because I don't know if I can trust what you've done
Wow.
today."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I was like,
Yeah.
we went to school for the same. I went to school for longer than he did.
Right. Right.
And we studied the same thing, though at the end of it
Mm-hmm.
all, we had the same degree in optometry.
Mm-hmm.
I'm qualified and capable of doing this, but something about the way I was carrying myself or appeared
Mm-hmm.
was not um, enough for some people. And so there came a day in my mind at a young age, even before I started working, that I knew that was coming.
Mm-hmm.
I knew I needed to be the boss. I knew I needed to
Mm-hmm.
be the last answer. And so
Mm-hmm.
between my wife and I, that is what we've decided to do.
Yeah. And what about now? 10 years into owning your own clinics, how is that feel like? Has anything changed how people respond to you?
Uh, yes and no. I mean, I think where we live, people know me a bit better now. You know, I'm also on our provincial council here. I'm the vice president of our provincial association. So
Mm-hmm.
people kind of know me. I'm in the newspaper a lot and things like
Mm.
that. And so I guess people have gotten to know me a bit, but it still happens where people, I'll walk in the room, or I'll call somebody to the room and they'll look at me like that, like,
Yeah.
I'm supposed to be seeing the doctor. I'm like,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
that's
That's me.
me. Or yeah, or they told me that the owner was going to be talking to me about something, and I'm like, yeah, that's me. And they're
That's
like,
me.
no, the clinic owner. And I'm
Yeah.
like, yes, I know.
Yeah.
Yes, that
Yeah.
is me. You can talk to me. So
Mm-hmm.
it still happens. It probably doesn't happen to the same extent. I don't know if it's because things are getting better, or if it's because I'm getting older, or
Mm-hmm.
and I maybe look different, or if it's because or carry myself differently, or if it's because people
Mm-hmm.
know me more now in the city.
Yeah.
I don't know which it is. Maybe it's all of it. It's
Mm-hmm.
probably to an extent all of it.
Mm-hmm.
But there are still experiences where I am not who
They
I'm not
expect you
acceptable
to be.
for people. Yeah, I'm not who they
Yeah.
expect me to be,
Yeah.
and I may not be able to be who they want me to be. You know,
Right. Right.
um,
Yeah.
I had recently.
Mm-hmm.
This was a really tough one, actually. I had a
Mm.
patient who had been seen um, somewhere, and as I'll say it, and not to throw anybody under the bus. I mean, things happen, mistakes happen, but her advanced glaucoma had been mismanaged, I'll
Mm-hmm.
say. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and again, that's not to toot my own horn or put anybody else down, but
Mm-hmm.
she wasn't being cared for the way I think she needed to be.
Right.
And so I was taking care of her, and I set up a referral with one of the glaucoma specialists here,
Mm-hmm.
and we've been working together. And she had years prior. I'll back up. I'll preface this by saying she had, when I first met her, told me that she had a doctor who she didn't like, her family physician. She didn't trust him anymore because she recognized. I don't know how she suddenly recognized, but she recognized that he had brown skin.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, so you don't trust your doctor because he has brown skin, but you're talking to me. Like,
Right.
she's like, well, no, but he's from Africa or something.
Okay.
I said, yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so is my family,
Right.
and she was fine. So a couple years passed, and I've set her up with this glaucoma specialist, and we're co-managing this patient. And she comes to me, and he's brilliant. I will say, this guy is brilliant. He's
Mm-hmm.
also from Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and she comes into the clinic one day and she's livid with
Mm-hmm.
me. She's angry because she won't see him anymore because she found out that he's from Africa. And why would I ever send her to see a
No.
guy from Africa? I'm like, well, you've been seeing
Wow.
this guy for 2 years now. Like what
Wow.
happened? Like, his level of intellect did not
Right.
decrease. He is
Right.
just as qualified, if not more so, over time in learning to
Yeah.
treat you and help you. And he's the
Right.
best person for this job. So that's why I
Mm-hmm.
picked him.
Right.
So I talked her off the ledge and I convinced her to go see him again.
Mm-hmm.
And then my staff got a call right before COVID that she didn't know if
Mm-hmm.
she could trust me anymore, um,
No.
for similar reasons.
Wow.
So I had to battle the whole idea of,
Yeah.
do we kick her out of our clinic?
Mm-hmm.
Do I pass her on to a different associate who works for me?
Yeah.
How do I handle this? I called her
Mm.
probably 4 or 5 times, never got through to her.
Mm-hmm.
So I made a decision, and right or wrong, some people may not agree with it at
Mm-hmm.
all, but I ended up making a decision to let her stay in our clinic, but
Mm-hmm.
I just was not going to be the one to see her anymore.
Right.
One of our associates, I thought she might feel more comfortable with her. She's a white lady.
Mm-hmm.
My associate is a white lady. So I
Right.
said, you know what, maybe this is a better match. Again, maybe it's the wrong response. Some people might say I should have gotten rid of her. I don't
Mm.
know what the right answer is.
Yeah.
I think quite often people say, oh, it should be like this. I
Mm.
don't know what the right answer is. I don't know where they developed that ability to know the right answer so quickly.
Right.
I still don't know if it was the right answer. But my
Yeah.
thinking was, my job is to care for these patients.
Mm-hmm.
She hurt me, but she
Mm-hmm.
didn't harm me.
Right.
Um, she wasn't a danger to our clinic.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a danger to me mentally, but not a danger to our clinic. I can handle
Mm-hmm.
it. So I let her stay, just not with me. I'm not So if she asks to see me again, I will not see her. But I've
Right.
made sure that she's in capable hands.
Right. That's really, I think it's hard to go through that as a practitioner.
Yeah.
Also
Yeah.
just as a human being. I know you work with your wife and you in that same setting as an owner. So do you know if how is her experience as a female owner?
Yeah. So her experience is probably a little different than mine. She would tell you that my experiences are harder. But I don't, like I said, I can handle it. I've built that armor already. Um, I don't like when things happen to her or to other people. And so, um, and I'm not saying I should have to handle it. I want to be clear, but I know I can. Um, her experience has been different. She gets more of the demeaning, "Oh, you did a great job, honey. That's impressive." After an eye exam, and you may get the same. I don't know, but just being a woman, I think that there are still people out there who will make those types of comments, and that makes my blood boil when she tells me that's what happened to her. And I mean, she's an amazing person, and so when I hear that people will act like, "Oh, wow, I didn't think that was going to be very good, but you're actually pretty good at this," like that, it makes me mad. So as a Black woman,
Yeah.
I'm sure that she gets it. I know that whether she sees it or not, she feels that she needs to sort of contain herself, I'll say at times, because she wears her heart on her sleeve. If you know her, you know what she's thinking all the time. It's you. She shows it on her face. She is quite reserved, but you will know where you stand with her relatively quickly.
Right.
But she does have to contain herself to an extent, in that she has to watch out that she's not perceived. If somebody else has done something wrong, she has to watch out that she's not the angry Black woman.
Right.
And so I know that there are days when she's had to come home and say, I didn't get to say everything that was on my mind. And I know what that's rooted in. It's because she probably doesn't feel that she always can say everything that's on her mind.
Right.
And that's unfortunate, because those were probably in situations where she couldn't say everything that was on her mind, but whoever she was speaking to was free to say everything that was on their mind. So there's this frustration that you have to be more measured, where maybe some others can just be free.
Right. That's
So
true.
so it does happen to her as well, but just maybe in different ways.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you feel that you have to kind of prove yourself in different ways, like Canada versus US, or it's pretty much the same?
Uh, I think that was, I guess it depends on to which community I'm talking about, there are, even within the Black community, we could be better unified. And so I'll use, maybe not so much professionally, I'll use even family as an example. I have a lot of family all around the States. I spend a lot of time in the States, and I remember, and obviously accents are different in Canada versus the States. And I have a family member who would ask me, why are you always trying to sound like you're British? What are you talking about? Like, you don't sound like me. You sound like you're British. I'm like, well, those are regional accents. Like, that has nothing to do with being. Canada and England are not close at all. Like, we just sound different. And in his mind, because I didn't sound like him, I was trying to be something else. And so while he isn't, I don't want to put words in his mouth or speak for his intentions, but I think that he just had an expectation of how I was supposed to carry myself and how I was supposed to be. And I wasn't living up to that expectation.
Okay.
And the same might apply professionally. Like I said earlier, I feel that people have an expectation of who I am supposed to be.
Right.
And it's probably similar in Canada as it is in the States. Maybe just different communities will view me differently, but everybody, I would say, has an expectation of who I'm going to be, or who I should be.
Right. That's true.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. And then you kind of mentioned that the community needs to be more unified. Can you kind of just elaborate on that?
Yeah, that's, how much time do you have? That's a big topic. I think we're doing well. I mean, there are different groups out there who are doing a good job, and I think that we, as a whole, a lot of people are doing a good job of understanding what we are all in together. But I think that there's history within our communities as well of, whether it's colorism, even within community. I grew up in a time when I had friends who were Black, who were lighter skinned than me, who would who would talk about how that meant that they were better looking than me, you
Wow.
know,
Mm-hmm.
and whether it's like we were talking about earlier with jokes, but having some degree of truth behind them, whatever, like that's a reflection of the society we live in. It may
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily, I won't make excuses for it, but I think that we are coming to a time when people are starting to realize we need to be more unified. When I tell
Mm-hmm.
people that my family is of African descent and I am Canadian born, that, well, my family were not part of American slavery, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, and so I've had conversations where that um, has sort of, I guess, in some people's mind, not everybody, I won't paint everybody with one brush, but in some people's mind, that has removed me from their struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And what I had to make clear was when I'm walking down the street, they don't see the two of us any differently. Your struggle today is my struggle today.
Mm-hmm.
Whether our ancestors have lived it differently or not, we live the same thing today. And that is that we're both Black people,
Right.
and so that's when I talk about being unified. If we want to see growth of a community, I think that it starts with mobilizing, unifying, and then mobilizing, so we
Mm-hmm.
can affect change, so we can take action. And I think that's what's a lot of these different rallies and protests and things that are happening around North America globally are a result of that. So that's why I say it's positive. It's happening, but I think that there's always room for continued growth, right?
Right. For sure. Um, and then I think people don't usually think about it is that there was slavery in Canada. It's just
Yeah.
wasn't really talked about as much.
Mhm.
Just as a whole in education, it's just not really talked about as much. It's a very Canadian thing. We don't want to talk about anything difficult.
Yeah.
Do you feel that, like, is it possible that in instances where your background can be used in a positive way, in personal or professional?
That's a really good question. Yes, I think that people are starting to. So again, back to that conversation we had earlier, where some people would maybe call it tokenism and say that they're using my face to help further a cause. I don't completely see it that way, because I know what I'm capable of. I know what I want to be able to achieve. But I think that my background has been helpful for different organizations and different groups. Maybe because it makes them look good. I don't know what their motives are, but because if I would like to believe that my merit is what's opened the doors for me.
Mm-hmm.
If my skin color has played any part, I don't know. Maybe it has. Um, but what I guess I know is that it's put me in a position where I need to be the voice for some,
Mm-hmm.
um, who otherwise may not have an opportunity to be that voice.
Right.
So yeah, I guess it's afforded me the opportunity to be the voice for many
Yeah.
who may not have that platform, you
Right.
know,
Yeah.
um, and who may not be, because I've had people come to me one person in particular who I know, his family members are both, his parents are both European,
Mm-hmm.
and he was born in Canada. And he said to me, I don't understand everything that's happening, but I want to understand and I want to push things forward. But what he's getting is that he feels that there's some resistance to people taking him seriously or understanding that he has motive to move things forward. And
Mm-hmm.
that's not necessarily any one group of people or any one ethnic background, but that's just people in general. And so he's come to me to sort of ask what he can do. Now, in the beginning, I said, like, I've said to a lot of people, like, I'm tired. Like, I've been thinking about this stuff for my whole life, so it's exhausting. And I've had some young people come to me and say, I shouldn't have to shoulder the burden for everybody and be the one to lead us all to the next stage. And where I've landed, and I said the same thing myself at some point, but where I've landed myself now is that I do think that the burden to an extent is on me. I have a platform. I am very recognizable as a Black person of a different ethnic background than the majority here. I work in a professional setting. I am on numerous councils and boards where my voice is heard. So this is an opportunity, whether I ask for it or not, to further what I believe to be the right cause. So yeah, I suppose it's of benefit in that I didn't ask for it, but it's of benefit in that it's given me the ability to have people, I suppose, feel comfortable that I may be somebody they can listen to in regard to what needs to be done next.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you are there any instances, like a story that you know, or your personal experience that you have encountered in a professional setting, say with other colleagues or patients, that you were able to kind of turn them around or prove to them that you are just as capable, if not more, not to discriminate you because of your background or anything like that?
Well, with patients, I think that, like I was saying before, I think there are a number of patients who don't expect things to go, you can't be the doctor. And then when they leave, they're floored that it was a greater experience than they expected or than they've had in the past with other people. I think growing up, it was always academics were the thing. So I was relatively athletic and I was a good student, but people looked at me and expected me to be athletic. But they didn't look at me and expect me to be an academic.
Yeah.
And so I busted my tail to make sure that I was always doing well in school for myself.
Right.
But also that was how I proved to people that I was just as capable as they were, of achieving good things or had great things, So it was academics where I sort of fell back to. I would like when I was in university, people used to ask me, you play football here? And I used to tell them, no, I play chess. I'm not, and it was just, I was doing everything I could to dispel the myth that I was just the jock who, I made sure, I worked really hard to always try to attain the highest possible academic standing. And I used my actions to prove to people. I didn't really ever tell them, hey, watch what I'm going to do here. It was my actions. And I would show them, whether it was through my successes or whatever else, that I was capable, and that I was going to work harder. Nobody was going to outwork me. It's still today. Nobody's going to outwork me. I'm going to work harder than if I find out that somebody's working harder, then I'll work harder, and that was just sort of ingrained in me as what I needed to do. And I've sort of maintained that today.
Yeah. And you kind of mentioned the younger generation coming up. How would you encourage them, say, as they pursue a professional career?
Yeah, it's difficult because I talk to a lot of young people right now. Even at ICO, I've had a few Zoom calls with some student leadership at ICO, the Black Student Union at ICO, other students. Some students from other schools have actually contacted me as well. It's a hard pill to swallow, and again, I don't know all the right answers, but as I see it, I do think that the burden, if we have an expectation that others are going to respond to us a different way, I can't teach somebody how to respond to me, but I know that what I can do to carry myself in a way that my message can be heard, and so I think that it is on us to the extent of making sure that your message is always heard. And so with these young people who I will speak to, I'll tell them, a lot of them are energetic. They've got this passion, this fire that they want to push things forward, but they're not sure if it is or if it should all be on them. And what I tell them is, it's not all on you. It's certainly not all on you, but don't lose your energy. Just if you believe that you've got a message that needs to be heard, then your role towards furthering your cause is making sure that your voice is heard. And that's it.
Right.
That might be in different forms or different capacities, but if you believe you've got a message to share, don't bite your tongue, you share it. Because that's, I think, part of how we ended up with all these systemic issues being so ingrained is they were not maybe placed upon us, but it's the acceptance of it, right? It's not adapting, but adopting it, right? And just letting it happen. And those years when I was younger or I'll use the word shy, I guess, and didn't want to or didn't know how to speak out against the things that I thought were unjust, I was furthering that cause, right? Like they'll say, like being complacent is being complicit, right? It's sort of that idea. So all I tell these young people is just don't get outworked and make sure your voice is heard always.
Yeah.
Your voice deserves to be heard. Everybody else's voice is heard. Your voice should be heard as well. And
right.
That's, to summarize it, that's sort of where I leave it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's perfect, and it's definitely very powerful, and that if you have a message, make sure you're heard. And I think that's great for everybody. That actually concludes our current conversation about racism in the professional setting in Canada. And be sure to catch our other ones that we will be having more. So we're excited to see you in the other conversations.